Welcome back to another edition of the City That Never Sleeps show. I'm your host, Brandon Pockers, joined by my co-host, once again, my partner in crime, Austin Kane. Austin, after a nice little reprieve last week, how's it feel to be back?
It feels great to be back. Just so much going on in the sports world, New York, everything. Happy to be here. Yeah, ready to get the show on the road.
We gotta cover a really interesting Jets game, a Giants game where they got absolutely smoked, around the NFL news because there was a lot. The Mets dominating free agency, the Yankees getting Aaron Judge back and potentially being in on some other free agents, and maybe we'll get to some NBA and NHL talk. No promises, but we're going to try. So sit back, guys, enjoy the show, and we're going to get into it right away. As I just put up on the screen right here, our question of the day: the New York Jets are still a real threat for the playoffs. Agree or disagree? So, with that, make sure to leave your guys' thoughts in the comments, any questions you have in the comments, and we're going to get to them. We're going to get to everything as soon as we can, if we can, but make sure to engage with the show. Make sure to comment. That way we can, bounce ideas off of you guys and really see what you guys want to talk about. So, it's the question of the day. I feel like there's no better place to start than with the New York Jets game. And on Sunday, the Jets lost to the Buffalo Bills by a score of 20-12. Now, Austin, you said you did watch this game. So before I give my thoughts on what happened and how the Jets did, I want to hear what you thought watching the game.
Yeah, I mean, it was a classic game in Buffalo. Elements definitely played a factor in this one. We saw some rain, saw some snow varied throughout the game. And I don't want to say like the Jets straight up lost this game themselves. They played a good game. They led the Bills in several statistical categories. Bills had fewer first downs than the Jets. They were worse on third down, less total yards, less time possession, but they were still able to come out on top. It was a grueling game. Just one thing to say that Mike White is a tough son of a you know what. He took a bunch of hits, came out of the game, came back into the game. He's a tough guy. And I think that's something that the Jets and Jets fans love to see right now, especially at the quarterback position.
Yeah, so, looking at this game in whole, I gave a post-game recap for my stuff on Jets Insider where, I think the Jets played an overall solid game because the defense looked really good. Quinnen Williams had 2 sacks before unfortunately suffering a calf injury. The coverage was sticky the entire game. Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, really good games once again. And despite the issues in the beginning of the game, the offense did pick it up. The offense was able to move the ball. Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore look really good. Zonovan Knight, and we'll get to the rookie class and going over them a little bit later in whole, but he looks like a revelation at the running back position in a class where they already had Breece Hall, who's unfortunately out for the year with an ACL injury. So there was a lot of really good things, but as I mentioned in that article and as I'm going to mention again, there comes a time, there comes a point where you can't overcome injuries and you can't overcome mistakes, especially when those things are intertwined together. Losing Corey Davis to a concussion, losing Quinnen Williams, like I mentioned, to a calf injury. Those 2 guys are absolutely vital to what the Jets do. Corey Davis, between the run blocking and his sure-handed ability over the middle of the field, most of the time, they're valuable aspects to how the Jets have won games this year. Look at the games the Jets have won. Corey Davis has been involved in just about all of them. Quinnen Williams is the engine, essentially, that keeps the Jets' defense moving. You lose those 2 guys, things become more difficult. And then that's not even mentioning the fact that George Fant got banged up. He came back in, but that's another tackle for a team that has lost tackle after tackle after tackle and has made it really hard to find continuity on the offensive line. And then that brings us to Mike White, which that might have been one of the more gutsy quarterback performances, not for the Jets, essentially, but really in all of football I've seen this entire year. You know, some of those hits he was taking, guys flying in at like 15, 20 miles per hour, freaking WWE spearing him, and they're all legal hits. No head and neck area, but he's getting speared. I have no idea how he was able to peel himself off the ground after some of those hits, but he did, and he kept battling through it. And really, his play, which if we look at the box score, and box score watching isn't always great, but the fact that he threw for 268 yards, he had 27 completions, you know, he was firing strikes to guys on the sideline. It was the types of completions, the types of throws he was making, where, let's be real, wasn't happening with the quarterback play earlier in the year. Wasn't happening when Zach Wilson was under center. You know, and that brings us to the mistake part, because right before halftime, CJ Mosley, not unforgivable, but unfathomable offsides penalty from one of your team captains. That penalty directly leads to Buffalo scoring a touchdown with about 20 seconds left in the half. That doesn't happen. The Jets are getting the ball back after halftime, 0-0 score. They drive down the field. That's a 7-0 game. Completely different game. Also, Joe Flacco fumble the minute Mike White is taken out and the minute George Fant is taken out. Mike Remmers, the replacement tackle, beat off the edge. Joe Flacco, who, quite frankly, should probably never step foot on an NFL field again, the way he looked out there in Buffalo, immediately strip sack because he can't move. He can't move in the pocket. And then the last big mistake, which really, it's like the three that really stood out to me. There's a few more here and there. You know, the Michael Carter pass interference, the obviously, you know, some of the false start penalties backing up the Jets earlier in the game. But that Michael Carter fumble, when the Jets were driving straight down the field and it looked like they were about to score, if Carter doesn't fumble that, the Jets probably make that a 2016-2017 game at that point. All the momentum's on their side, and let's be honest, they probably win that game. The way they were looking, the fact that they limited Josh Allen to under 200 passing yards once again, the fact that Josh Allen did not do any damage in the air, the fact that Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, Dawson Knox outside of the touchdown catch really got shut down. You know, there wasn't really that path to the Jets blowing that game unless they made the mistakes. And they did make the mistakes. And quite frankly, that's what happens when you play really good elite teams and you make too many mistakes. We saw it last week with Minnesota. We saw it this week with Buffalo.
Yeah, I think when you go back to like Joe Flacco, he's a statue back there. We know that. We knew that coming into this game. And it seems like every time he's in there, he just can't move at all, and he's getting cracked and potentially losing the ball like he did this week. I think it just poses the bigger question as who should be suited up as that QB2 in that backup role. Because, I mean, for me, I think it has to be Zach Wilson. Saleh said he doesn't see his career as a Jet being over, and he'll potentially be back on the field as New York Jet. I think he has to be QB2 in a situation like that and throughout the rest of the season, because I just don't think Flacco just doesn't have it. He doesn't have it anymore. He's not an NFL quarterback at this rate.
Well, let's be honest here, right? If it comes to this week, and after we saw Flacco on the field and Zach Wilson isn't the backup, so you're telling me at that point Zach Wilson sat down for essentially, 3-4 weeks, and he's still not ready to be a backup? If that's the answer, then that's all you need to know about how the Jets actually feel. Actions speak louder than words in that case. And then that expedites the fact that, hey, Zach Wilson's probably not going to be here next year. It's going to be very interesting to see how they handle it, because if you still keep Flacco in that role, or you elevate a guy like Streveler, or they make some other move, it just tells you where Zach Wilson is at mentally. And then we can get into that conversation before we move on to the Giants. But then that'll say something very big about how the Jets plan on handling the quarterback position moving forward. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, 100% agree. This week will be a big tell for that. I mean, I know Salah said they're preparing as Mike White is going to be the starter on Sunday, but you never know. Setbacks happen. Something stupid could occur. Who knows? So we'll see this weekend. Big decisions to be made.
Yeah, so moving on to the Jets' outlook for the future, and really the question of the day, but want to react to some comments first. What's up, fellas? Big game next week. That's correct. The Jets play the Detroit Lions. Jets, Lions, and Giants, Commanders. Very, very big games. We will get to both of those in a little bit. We got DG in the chat. Don wear those Lion socks, and he also says, "Fly, Eagles, fly." And then DG says, "I'd love if the Commanders got knocked out of the playoffs to the Lions." Not sure if those teams play down the stretch. I guess they do, but yeah, that would be very interesting. So now that brings us to our question of the day. The New York Jets are still a real threat for the playoffs. And I'm going to have to agree with this because, coming into the Minnesota game, coming into the Buffalo game, the way I laid it out was the Jets need to take one of those games to really solidify their playoff standing, to be in a spot where, hey, we have room if we drop one of these games to a Detroit, to a Jacksonville, to a Seattle, where we're already at 8 wins. So it doesn't, that means 2 wins against those, 2 wins in our last 4 would get us to 10. 3 would get us to 11. If you run the table, you have a shot at the division. And the Jets were in these games. It's not like they were blown out. Obviously, you had the red zone issues in Minnesota. Couldn't capitalize. Couldn't get in the end zone when you needed to, because if you do, you win that game. Buffalo, the 3 critical mistakes, Mosley, Flacco, Carter, end up costing you that game, end up costing you opportunities where you still only lose by 1 score. You still shut down Josh Allen. You still keep yourself in a game where, quite frankly, a Jets team from last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, probably gets annihilated in that game when the adversity hits. The schedule, in some ways it gets easier, in some ways it doesn't. The Lions are on fire. They've won a slew of games. I think they're up to 4 or 5 straight, or 4 out of their last 5.
6 or something. Yeah, something crazy.
They're on a tear. Jacksonville is streaky. Some days they look like a world beater. Some days they look like one of the worst teams in football. Seattle is going through a really tough stretch. And Miami looks shaky when playing strong defenses, as we've seen. Yes, Skylar Thompson was the quarterback, but the Jets still were able to shut down the Miami Dolphins receivers when they played. All in all, I think the Jets win 3 out of their next 4, possibly even 4 out of their next 4. Because as good as Detroit has been playing, they are outside in December at MetLife in the cold. It's probably going to be raining. We've seen Jared Goff in these conditions. Has he gotten better in them? Yeah, but he's not great. The Lions' defense is also still not great, even though they've been better. That passing defense is still very susceptible. And obviously, caveat with the quarterback play, but if you have Mike White out there, which as of now, as of the time we were doing this show, it sounds like he will be out there. The Jets are optimistic that he's going to play. I think Mike White can have a huge game against Detroit. I think Elijah Moore can have a huge game against Detroit. I think Garrett Wilson will have a huge game against Detroit. Obviously, the defense, Quinnen Williams being back would be huge, especially with how good the Lions are in the trenches. But I think Sauce Gardner or DJ Reed can do a very good job shutting down the Lions' weapons. I think the Jets' defense can continue to do what they're doing against the offenses they play down the stretch. Combine that with, the Jets facing weak defenses compared to a Buffalo, compared to some of the teams they played earlier in the year. And you have a really good chance to be 10-7 heading into a game with Miami that could decide your playoff fate.
Yeah, I mean, as for the poll, I'm going to also agree with it. I mean, they're still right on the bubble. They're have the same record as Patriots, although they do a tiebreaker on them. But just as an outlook on the rest of the season for the Jets, they get Detroit. And then just like starting with that game, something I think they should focus in on is just assuring the fact that Detroit will not be able to get a run game going, which is something they've struggled later as the year has gone. The Lions have. And doing that, forcing Jared Goff to beat you and beat your star-studded defensive backs and your secondary. And does Jared Goff have the ability to do that? Maybe. But I think you definitely give yourself a better chance of winning if you make him make plays instead of getting ran over by the two-headed monsters, Swift and Jamal Williams.
Yeah, exactly. Put the game in Jared Goff's hands. You have the defensive line. You have the horses on that unit to pressure Goff, to shut down the run, to make him beat you. And that plays right into your defense's hands. Look, if you can do that against a team in Buffalo that has one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL, consistently, not just at your home stadium, but on the road in Buffalo, then I think you can do that to Jared Goff. Look, even when losing Quinnen Williams, the Jets still were able to generate pressure. Not as much, but they still were. They still were able to use that defensive line rotation to their advantage and consistently have fresh guys to get pressure on the quarterback. It really comes down to, can the Jets play the way the Jets have played this year? Because I think if they do, I think the Jets win this game 28-14. I think that it's a must-win. They're going to come out and treat it like it's a must-win. And I just don't see an avenue with, and I am acknowledging this, how good Detroit has been, where Detroit can overcome, one, their defensive deficiencies that I think the Jets can exploit, and overcome an elite Jets defense.
Yeah, I agree. Jets should try and get up early on them, force the Lions to make more plays down the stretch, and make them play comeback and have your D-backs lock it down as they've been doing. And that's key to success in this game. I'm also going to give this game to the Jets. As for score, let's go 24-16. Well, 8-point difference.
Yeah, no, I think that an 8-point difference, 2-score difference, I think that's the range we're sitting at for this game. I truly think that, the Jets are going to win this game, and I think they set themselves up to really have a shot to run the table because, I don't want to get into depth with all 4 of the games that they have coming up because we're going to be able to cover that in the week's advance, but just a preliminary view at it, Jets-Jacksonville, same thing. Like, I think the Jets have the defense to shut down Jacksonville, and I think the Jets' offense can really look good and control the game against the Jacksonville defense. Seattle, they might go for 200 yards on the ground in that game. They might throw for a bunch of yards. Seattle's defense has been terrible, and then that brings you to Miami, where that's probably the toughest game in that stretch. Can you shut down Tyreek again? Can you shut down Jalen Waddle again? Can you shut down that offense? And I think if the Jets, and we are so far out from this can change in an instant. If you take the same game plan the San Francisco 49ers did, you press coverage, you knock guys off their routes, and don't let Tua get in the rhythm that he's been all year, I think you can cause issues for him. So I see an avenue where the Jets win all 4 of their last games. I see an avenue where they win 3. But regardless of that, I think they are still a huge threat for the playoffs.
Yeah, 100% agree. Just these next 4 games, Detroit have my prediction. Jacksonville, like you said, Trevor has been on and off. Their team as a whole has been on and off. It's a Thursday night game, though, so you really just have no idea what you're going to get with those. Jets Seattle. Yeah, Seattle's defense has just not been that great at all season. It's really going to come down to shutting DK down. Don't let him and Gino get that connection, or Tyler Lockett crazy break free route, as well as stopping Kenneth Walker, assuming he's good to go by then. And then Jets Dolphins. I'm still holding out. I still think the Jets get a Sunday night game, and if it's going to be any of them, it's going to be that one. That being said, that could be for the final playoff spot. We don't know. I think the Jets, for that to all happen, I want to see. I would like to see them go 3 out of the next 3, and then throw it up to a divisional game in Week 18. But we don't know what's going to happen. I'm just excited that we're coming down to the stretch. Jets are still in playoff contention. When's the last time you were really able to say that?
Over a decade ago, since we were like, what, like 10?
Yeah.
So, I think the last playoff game was that Jets Steelers game.
Yeah, it's getting exciting for the Jets fans. So.
And like
coming down
and like the thing at the end of the day with that is, we can say like, oh, it's a disappointment if the Jets don't make the playoffs. It's cool if they do, but think about what we were talking about at the beginning of the year. Think about what we were talking about with this team, before the season started. 7 wins would have been an accomplishment. And now it's like, oh, it's a disappointment if the Jets don't make the playoffs. It just shows you how far along this team is compared to where everyone thought they would be. And it shows you that they are building in the right direction. It shows you that they will be a good team for a time. It shows that they will be a contender and they are ready to contend in years to come.
Yeah, they're farther down the timeline that they thought they'd be, I'm sure, before they went into the season. A little difference on probably who they thought their starting quarterback would be right now, but hey, that's football. Teams evolve. That's what the good teams do.
In terms of what's up, Brian? How you doing? In terms of the Mike White injuries, it's just been reported that the Jets expect him to start. This came out after the game. Obviously, he's day-to-day with the rib injuries, but he said he feels good. So we shall see. Should be interesting. Before we move on to the Giants game, do you want to talk about, I like talking about this every week, but just to fully wrap up the Zach Wilson future quarterback discussion?
Yeah, so I think starting this weekend, he should be officially QB2, and if not, like we were saying earlier, that's where the Jets stand on Zach Wilson if he's not the backup this week. That being said, if Mike White can't play this week, I'm putting Wilson out there. I just think you're hurting this team more if you throw Flacco in there. Can't move, no escapability. He was 1 for 3 for a yard and lost a fumble that turned the game around. Just can't be happening. And give Wilson one last chance, see what he's got, get some film for a potential trade or something. Just if Mike White can't go, give it to Wilson. If he can go, give Wilson the backup job.
So we got Brian agreeing to what you're saying in the comments, saying, I think if Mike White continues to start, I agree to the poll. And yeah, I think that's realistic. But with Zach Wilson, it's exactly what we talked about. If the Jets are scared to make him the backup when he's been benched, he's supposedly been improving in practice, having that mental reset. What does that tell us? What does that tell everyone about, one, what the Jets truly think about him, no matter what is said in the media? And two, what does that tell us about where Zach Wilson is at as a quarterback? Because regardless of what happens this year, right? And I'll be honest, I don't think, barring another Mike White injury, Zach Wilson even sees the field for the Jets this year. I personally do not know how you turn back to him in any capacity next year. And look, I get it. Number 2 overall pick in the draft, potential franchise guy. It's just a matter of you saw what happened with the locker room. And look, everyone can say, oh, we have his back, but the those locker room things take a lot to really, fix and develop again. The quarterback position is so important to the point where if you are a guy that earns a certain reputation, it's tough to change that. It's only changed through play. And Zach Wilson's play has not been great either. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is, with the way the Jets are progressing forward, the fact that next year they're probably going to be looked at in a light where, hey, it's time to go. It's time to compete for a playoff spot, if not the division, to actually be in that race for the entire year. And at that point, it's, if we don't make the playoffs, especially after the way this season has gone, it's a disappointment. I just don't see how you put Zach Wilson back out there, considering the lack of progress you've seen out of him. I'm leaning towards a situation where I have Mike White as a bridge starter, and I'm taking a developmental guy in like the second or third round. I feel like that's the plan. Hell, maybe you even go with Anthony Richardson at the back end of the first as your developmental guy if he makes it to that point. Hey, maybe if CJ Stroud falls into an area you're comfortable with, maybe you trade up and get him as your developmental guy. I just don't see an avenue where a truly competing Jets roster can be afforded to play Zach Wilson that hasn't improved. Why would you put your team in a spot where, oh, we're back in a situation where the entire roster is excelling, and yet the quarterback's the one holding us back again for the third year in a row or the second year in a row, however you want to look at it. And that's why I'm personally a fan of moving on from him. I understand people that want to let him compete in camp. I understand people that want to see him start again. It's completely understandable. Those arguments are valid in their own ways. I'm just taking the lens of, I've seen him play these past 2 years. The progress hasn't been there, even as someone that really was excited to see how he looked in the NFL, especially after watching him a bit in college. But if the team's accelerating beyond what it was, because let's be honest, if it's the real if the expectations are what happened this year, Zach Wilson's finishing the year, because you're getting that full body of work and then deciding what the future is with him. The Jets excelled. The Jets exceeded expectations. So at the end of the day, I just don't see how he's back if the Jets are truly playing at this level, which I think they will be now since they've reached it. And I think you move Wilson for whatever value you can truly get for him. Get Mike White, draft a developmental guy, if not a guy in the first round to sit behind White after you sign him to a short little extension because he is a free agent. Have Streveler as like your number 3 and move forward that way.
Yeah, after this year, I would also be done with Wilson. But yeah, just for the rest of the year, I'm having him strapped up as my backup. And if he has to go in, he has to go in. That's one thing. But yeah, next year, off with him.
Yeah, so that wraps up our Jets talk. We got a lot of fun weeks coming up with this team because, good or bad, we're going to have a lot to talk about in terms of what's going on with this team. So, you ready to move on to the Giants game?
Let's do it.
Where do you want to start with this one?
Start anywhere. It was just absolute destruction this weekend at MetLife. Birds came to town, clinched their playoff spot, and kind of just exposed the Giants, if that's the correct choice of words.
I mean, I'll be honest here. I have more Eagles thoughts than I do Giants thoughts because this kind of lines up with what I said about, the Giants and what was happening. It gets to a certain point when the injuries and it's just too insurmountable. And they're just not as good as Philadelphia.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, offensively, defensively, special teams wise, it all went wrong. They fell into a 21-0 hole quite fast, I would say, which takes out the run game completely. Saquon had 9 carries, and the Giants are going to win a game when Saquon has 9 carries. Going down like that eliminates the run game pretty much at all costs. And then when your O-line's giving up 7 sacks and Daniel Jones has 0 room to breathe back there against that fierce defensive line of the Eagles, it's just not going to work out. And that's what happened this weekend. They just got smoked.
I mean, like, the Giants' leading rusher in the game was Tyrod Taylor, and he had 2 carries for 40 yards. And that was like at the end of the game. We got Brian Daly in the chat saying still waiting for the Giants to show up. I mean, look, we mentioned it weeks ago, right? The Giants, if they were to make the playoffs, it was only going to be a wild card because they were not competing with the 2 big teams in the division. Let's be honest, it's really the Eagles are in a class of their own because we'll talk about Dallas. They had a bit of a scare this weekend where it's like, yeah, the Eagles lost the game, but they've never truly. I mean, then again, the Eagles did struggle with Houston too. So it's like the Eagles have had their slip-ups, but I think it's good in a sense that the Eagles, let me rephrase it. Start over. The Eagles and Cowboys have both shown an ability to overcome slow starts, overcome bad opponents, even when they probably should have dominated them. So maybe it's just the nature of the NFC where everything's a lot closer than people really think it is. But at the end of the day, the Giants are not in the same class as the Eagles, and they're a little bit under the Cowboys when they're healthy, and they're not healthy, so that means they're not in the same class as Dallas. I'm personally concerned about my prediction that the Giants will be a wild card team because this Washington game coming up, and I think it's safe to say we can move on to talking about the Washington game because personally, I have nothing else to say about this Eagles-Giants game besides the Eagles dominated. Miles Sanders ran for whatever he wanted. Jalen Hurts looked as comfortable as I've ever seen him throwing the football. So the Washington Commanders, and this is just, I guess it's a caveat of NFL schedule making where I personally just don't understand it. The Giants play the Commanders. The Giants then have to go play Philadelphia. The Commanders get a bye week. Essentially 2 weeks to prepare for, guess what? Another matchup against the Giants, which is essentially the Giants' playoff hopes on the line.
Yeah, it is weird how they do that. I mean, the Commanders get to tie the Giants and then fresh off a bye, get the bye, and then right back to the Giants. I mean, little competitive advantage, if you want to say that. But yeah, no, this game next week, Sunday night, it's a big one for both teams. And it's kind of weird that I'm saying this, but our question of the day was the Jets are the Jets still a real threat for the playoffs? And I feel more comfortable saying that the Jets will make the playoffs than I would the Giants. But the Giants are currently the 7th seed, and the Jets are two seeds out. So I don't know. It's really this game this week is just huge.
Well, yeah. Like it goes to show you how weak the NFC is this year compared to the AFC. I mean, the AFC, right? Teams in contention technically: Buffalo, Miami, New England, New York, Kansas City, and the Chargers. You could argue the Raiders are lurking a little bit, but not so much anymore. You got the Ravens and Bengals along with the Titans. The NFC, yeah, you have your NFC East, but the Giants or Commanders could fall out really fast. The Seahawks are barely struggling to stay alive, and the Cardinals and Rams are lost causes. The Vikings have had the NFC North on lock since like October, it feels like. And the Lions, the only reason they're even threatening for a playoff spot because they've gone on like a 5-game win streak. And then the last division in there, the NFC South, I don't even want to give attention to it. The division leader is 6-7. Any team in the AFC East would have at least a 1-game lead and would probably be running away with the division. So it just shows you the discrepancies of those two conferences, right? And even with that, I'm not confident in the Giants making the playoffs because they don't have the tiebreaker with Seattle. Seattle beat them. And let's be honest, my prediction for this week, I don't think they're going to have the tiebreaker with Washington because I think Washington's going to beat them soundly.
Yeah, I mean, Heineke has proven he can win. Big game, prime time in Washington. Going back 2 weeks, I missed our show last week. I hate ties. I mean, the NFL, just do away with them. I just couldn't imagine paying all that money to go watch this game just for it to end in a tie. It's pretty ridiculous, but I get it at the same time. But yeah, like you're saying, AFC and NFC, just two different worlds, it seems like. And yeah, this Sunday night, I don't know. Washington looks like they're better positioned than the Giants right now. They're playing a little better football, and they're coming off the bye. So, I mean, all signs are pointing to the Commanders winning this one.
Look, I could be wrong here, and I've been wrong on this show before, plenty of times. But between the weeks of preparation, the Commanders actually getting healthy, potentially having Chase Young back for this game. Let's not forget that. And how good he is. The fact that the Giants are hurting, the fact that the Giants are coming off getting absolutely bludgeoned by the Eagles, and the fact that it's a road game on prime time. I think I gave the Jets a 28-14 prediction win over the Lions. I think this game is really along those lines. I think it's a 20-14, 23-14, 27-14 type game for the Commanders. I just don't personally see how the Giants overcome everything in this game. I don't see how they overcome the fact that Kadero Hodge is basically their number one wide receiver right now, alongside Darius Slayton. Don't see how they overcome the fact that they cannot get a run game going because teams are selling out to stop Saquon. And I don't see how a defense that has only gotten more injured, it feels like, a team that has only dealt with more injuries, specifically the offense with Saquon, the fact that they're still struggling to find secondary help and pulling guys off the street, a lot of the Jets of like 2 years ago, really last year when they had like one functioning safety. I just don't see how you beat a Commanders team that has Terry McLaurin, that has Jahan Dotson, that has Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson. I don't see how you overcome a defense that has a very talented defensive line. I just don't see it. And that makes things very difficult because then you have Minnesota, Indianapolis, and Philadelphia to finish the year. If you don't win this game, like I don't think they will, Giants aren't making the playoffs, man. It's not happening. Unless they pull out a win against the Eagles that are maybe resting guys in Week 18, or they pull out a win against Minnesota, which Minnesota is the biggest wild card of all, as we'll get to. I don't know. I truly don't know.
Yeah, vital must win this week. Minnesota, like you said, we'll get into them. Indy, you have to go win that game too, assuming you're still in the conversation. And then, yeah, Week 18, you got to assume the Eagles aren't really going to be playing too many of their stars there. You'd have to win that one too. It's pretty much you have to win 3 out of the next 4, if not 4 out of the next 4, if you want to play in the playoffs.
It's like the dichotomy between the two New York teams couldn't be more different, where it's like the Jets have dealt with injuries. The Giants have dealt with injuries, so there's that. But the Jets have the easier schedule. They've competed with more teams versus the Giants have the harder schedule, and haven't competed with these types of teams. So it's very interesting how that lines up. Before we move on to our around the NFL talk, I feel like I'd be remiss if I talked about one team's quarterback situation in New York and not the other. The enigma of Daniel Jones has been something that's really interested me for really ever since he's been in the league. Or ever since his rookie year ended and he's truly, gotten past that, oh, he's just a rookie label. I've always felt like he's a decent quarterback that can do well if he has the good surrounding talent, but he's never got the decent supporting cast. Like, the Giants don't have a number one wide receiver. They don't have anyone to take the pressure off him or Barkley. He has to run to make things happen. I'm just in the spot with Jones being a free agent at the end of the year. What do you do at the quarterback position if you're the Giants? Because if you don't pay him, someone else probably will.
Yeah, no, he's in my book, he's a starting quarterback in this league. If he's not getting the money from the Giants, someone's going to be paying him to be the first guy under center next offseason. I can see arguments both sides, bringing him back and not bringing him back. Personally, I think he's earned more than enough to come back, at least on a 1 year prove it kind of deal or something, which, not as often you see that with quarterbacks, I would say. But I mean, I think that's where you have to draw it up to. You have to go get him someone on the outside who's a real threat at wide receiver. Saquon will be there. And, I mean, the line also everything has to improve on this Giants team. Let's be real about that. But, yeah, he needs the opportunity, and he's deserved the opportunity to play with true talent at the wide receiver position. And if I'm the Giants, if you can get him back on a 1 year deal, I would do so.
It comes down to it. It's kind of like a Sam Darnold situation where it's like, are you chalking it up to, the supporting cast not being good enough, the talent around him not being good enough, and you're betting on him actually being the quarterback of the future if you can build the team around him? Or do you feel that another guy would be better and it's better to invest more of the resources into, the offensive line, receiver, the defense, and find a different avenue, a cheaper avenue at quarterback? It's that balance. And quite frankly, I don't think anyone will really know the answer until next year at the earliest. Because, we've seen Brian Daboll and Daniel Jones in year one of them being together. It's been pretty good for the most part. The Giants are in a playoff race. No one expected that out of them. Yeah. Do I think things would be a bit different if the Giants were in striking distance of a top 10, top 5 pick? Yeah, because I think they're probably going quarterback in that situation. But they're kind of in this quarterback purgatory in a sense where they don't have that guy behind Jones that could be the bridge guy. As much as I love Tyrod Taylor, I hate putting the injury-prone label on guys, but he's been hurt a lot. He hasn't been able to stay on the field and be consistent. You don't have that guy there. You don't have the supporting cast there. So you have to essentially make your bed and sleep in it. No matter what decision you make, you have to make that decision and roll with it. Do I think the Giants could go after a guy of their own and really have Tyrod and a rookie? Yeah, I do. And quite frankly, I think the way that the Giants are building this team, depending on obviously Jones's contract demands, I think play a huge part in this. I could very easily see Daniel Jones walking. I could see the Giants be like, Daniel, thank you for your time here. We're not going to bring you back. We're going to go in a different direction. And I think that's justifiable. Just as I think it's justifiable if you bring Jones back on a short, let's say, 2-year deal, team option, or mutual option in year 2. So it's really a 1-year prove-it deal, like you said. I don't think that's a bad move either. So it's just a matter of what avenue does this team go? I personally think they could move on from him, but I think it really comes down to the last remaining few games. Whether that's fair or not, and it probably isn't fair, if the Giants flame out, if the Giants don't make the playoffs after starting strong, you probably have a better chance of being like, all right, we're justified in moving forward with our rebuild. Let's find ourselves a different avenue at quarterback. You make the playoffs, bit harder to do that. So I'll be very interested to see how that goes.
Yeah, we're sitting at 23rd in the draft order right now, so no real chance. Again, I guess the top guys, however you want to draw it up. I mean, that being said, I think he's earned it. Like you said, I would also chalk it up to these last 4 games, which may be a little unfair for Jones, but kind of the last test he has to see what he can do. And the one thing that I think just totally differs the Giants from the Eagles and Cowboys is that this year we've seen those other 2 teams, like the ability to just go in somewhere and blow someone out. The Giants are just missing some pieces to have that ability, and it just kind of brings them down to a lesser tier than teams above them.
Yeah, they haven't had that solidified, they're for real type win this year. So we got Peter in the comments saying, "What's up? How we doing,
Peter?
man? Glad to see you here." Before we move on to our NFL discussion, wanted to remind you guys that 1 second here. Always fun pulling this up. All Campus is giving 20% off everything in their store, including hats and shirts to all their subscribers. Make sure you guys get in on that. And then Creative Window Design Center, serving New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, and Florida. They're a fully authorized Hunter Douglas dealer. Contact Jeff at the number you see below for a free consultation. So I want to switch things up a little bit this week. And before we move into, recapping games and different things like that, if you even want to do that, I want to look at the draft order, because we are late enough in the season where I think it's time to start looking at the draft order and what these positions and draft slots mean for the teams picking there. And it's a very, very interesting draft order right now. So just to look at the top 10 right now, we'll talk, and then we'll look at the remainder of the order. Number 1, we got the Houston Texans, 11-1, 8-game losing streak, relatively decent strength of schedule, but unless the Texans go on a little bit of a run, I don't see how anyone else is having the number 1 overall pick. At 2 through 5, we got the Denver Broncos, which that pick goes to the Seattle Seahawks. They have been losers of their last 5. We then have the Chicago Bears, the LA Rams, who are giving their pick to the Detroit Lions, the New Orleans Saints, who are giving their pick to the Philadelphia Eagles, and then at number 6, we have the Arizona Cardinals. So, what do we think? What are your thoughts on that top 6?
Houston, I think you have to go quarterback. They'll have, like you said, I don't see them falling out of this one spot. They'll have their choice. As of right now, I think it's pretty much down to Stroud and Young. I'm sure someone else through the process will be able to sneak up in there. I'm going one of those 2. Seattle, 2. They could go a bunch of places. Edge rusher, D-line, O-line, I would say. Probably 3 of their bigger needs. Their defense has been just slashed all year long, so I would try and focus on that side of the ball up there. Will Anderson, someone along those lines. A guy that can be a real anchor for your defense. Then we got Chicago. Chicago, I would say it has to be a wide receiver. That or offensive lineman. You have to get Fields a true playmaker, someone he can get the ball to every play if he needs to, and they can just make magic happen. After that, Detroit. I'm pretty comfortable with Goff at the moment if I'm them. He seems to be growing game by game as his career goes on. Him and Dan Campbell seem to have a true relationship there. The wide receiver position, linebacker, corner. somewhere, one of those. Then you get the Eagles, which is probably the best team that will ever draft at the number 5 position. I would have to say, at least off the top of my head. Uh, I mean, they're losing Miles Sanders next year, but I mean, assuming if he doesn't come back, running back is a tough position to draft in the first round because their lifespans are not very long. So it would be pretty tough to get a running back at 5. Wouldn't be totally thrown off if they did it. And go interior lineman, linebacker, corner. Uh, Bradbury is a free agent after this year, so if he goes, replace him with someone to pair with Slay. And then 6 is Arizona. Arizona, what should they do? I mean, defense. I would have to say you have your playmakers on the offensive side locked up at the moment for a few years. Don't see Kyler going anywhere too fast, especially he just got banged up last night. I would see him going edge or corner, something along the defensive line. But yeah, that's what I got for my top 6.
Yeah, so the Texans, I personally think C.J. Stroud's a lock. I think, or let me rephrase that. I think Bryce Young is not lock for number 1 pick, and not Stroud. I obviously things can change, but because my next thought involves Stroud because I think Bryce Young is the consensus number 1 overall pick. The Texans, it's evident they need a quarterback. They have talent on the roster, but they need that franchise guy. It's simple as that. After that is when things get very interesting because if you told me beginning of the year that Houston, Seattle, Chicago, Detroit, and Philadelphia was the top 5, I think my only answer would have been, how did the Eagles tank out so hard? But it's very interesting, right? Because it's Denver's pick, but that went to Seattle. Seattle's pick currently sits at 17. The Rams are at number 4, and that goes to Detroit. The Lions are currently at 15. And the Eagles pick is actually the Saints pick, and the Eagles are currently the best team in the league, clinched a playoff berth, and have the number 32 overall pick. It's very interesting with Seattle, right? Because, I think they're going to re-sign Geno Smith. I think that'd be a great move for them. But I guess it comes down to, do you pick a guy at number 2 overall in CJ Stroud to sit behind Geno and have your quote-unquote franchise guy? Personally, not really interested in doing that with the number 2 overall pick, especially with Seattle showing that, hey, we have a really solid draft class we can contend. I'm going with a guy like Jalen Carter or Will Anderson. I am beefing up a very bad defense at the moment. I'm investing a lot of resources there because guess what? You have much better trench play on offense. You have DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. If anything, I'm adding a receiver late in the 2nd round. You have a quarterback at least for 2 or 3 years in Geno Smith. Maybe you draft a guy later in the draft. I'm investing as many resources I can in the defense and opening that window back up. Moving on from that, Chicago, look, either offensive line or receiver. Simple as that. Offensive line, I think you stay there because you can't miss on your guy. If you are dead set, locked in, going receiver, there is a team by the name of the Indianapolis Colts or the Las Vegas Raiders. I would personally make a trade with the Colts because the Colts need a franchise quarterback. Allow them to trade up to take a guy like Stroud or Levis if it gets to that point. Move down because guess what? At number 7 overall, you're still having your choice of wide receivers in all likelihood because Detroit's not taking a receiver at 4. The Eagles aren't taking a receiver at 5. And the Cardinals aren't taking a receiver at 6. That's the trade. If you want Quinnen Johnson, who's probably the number 1 receiver in this class, the big body receiver that you need, the true number one, that's probably where that the thought of receiver comes into play. Anything before that, offensive line, offensive line, offensive line. Beyond that, Detroit could go quarterback. I think they'll go whatever one of Carter or Anderson is still available. We got Jake Pockrist in the chat. No idea what he's talking about. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Appreciate the support.
Jake.
So the Lions at 4 obviously have that option. Then the Eagles can just go best player available. They can pick whoever they want. I think it's going to be a guy on the defensive line. If we look at Tankathon right now, the mock draft for the Eagles has them picking Myles Murphy, the edge rusher out of Clemson. I think that's a great pick. I think that's a very good idea for the Eagles, because if there's any hole on that team, it's probably edge, and that's more of a future issue, not a present issue. So I think that's very interesting in terms of that. Then Arizona, Tankathon has them going with Peter Skoronski at 6. They actually have the number 37 overall pick as well currently. I think that's a pretty good pick. I think the Cardinals can move up, especially with no Kyler Murray. Their season's kind of done. Our hot takes looking pretty good, with Cliff being gone by the end of the year at the maximum. The Cardinals are bottoming out. Kyler tore his ACL. Hope he fully recovers. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm leaning with Arizona. And then to really round out the top 10, you have the Colts at 7, Vegas at 8, Carolina at 9, Atlanta at 10. Nothing really surprising me there. I personally would like to see Carolina find a quarterback, but they keep winning games and they have an actual outside shot at the NFC South. So that's me really interesting to see. Austin, I'll kick it back to you. Out of the rest of the draft order, you can go, beyond top 10, obviously. What really stands out to you?
Let's see here. Yeah, Steelers, 13th at the moment. Season's probably over after a loss on Sunday to Baltimore. But I'm still not a fan of losing for the higher draft pick. Give me all the wins, because in a month I'll be begging for football back and would be crying for any win. So 13, I think we have to go O-line or corner. Tankathon has us Joey Porter Jr., who was an absolute beast at Penn State. Joey Porter Sr. played it for the Steelers. I'm totally a fan of keeping him in the state of Pennsylvania, bringing him to Pittsburgh, and that's what I want them to do. So that's where I'm at.
That's a legacy pick for them, right?
It would be.
It would be a legacy pick. All right. For me, I think I'm very interested to see what happens with Green Bay and Detroit over the back half of the year, as well as, depending on where the Jets are. I personally think they'll be a bit higher than 18. Where do they go with their pick? I think offensive line's realistic, linebackers realistic. Obviously, in a very, very rare scenario, that would depend on free agency and trades. Quarterback could be in play depending on if a certain guy slides. Outside of that, not really much more to say about the draft order. So I think it's time to move on to our NFL, just looking at some of the NFL games. We got some comments. Jake giving compliments to Austin, saying great stuff. We got Mo Diesel saying pick 3 the rest of the season. Goff, Brady, Danny Dimes, or Cousins. And this leads right into what I want to talk about. I appreciate the comment. I personally am going Goff, Danny Dimes, and Cousins. Those 3 guys, I think, are in much better spots. I think they're in much better spots than Tom Brady. Because if we look at this past week, and out of all the games that happened this past week, I don't think there is a bigger story, so to say, than what's going on with the Buccaneers. Because I feel like that has the most future implications out of any of the games. And we'll touch on one or two more, but this is really the game where I personally was like, oh boy, I don't think Tom Brady's going to be back next year.
And that's fair to say. I mean, he went up against 49ers, his hometown team, whatever. Brock Purdy's first career start going into this one. I mean, this 49ers defense is real. We saw them pretty much kind of slow down and stop that Miami offense with Tyreek, Waddle, Tua. And they did it again versus Tom. I mean, he threw the ball 55 times, which is possibly the most he's thrown in the Buccaneers uniform, just off the top of my head. And they were down early. The point is 28-0. It was just bad. They couldn't get much going, and they hadn't been able to get much going in the past all year. That's fair to say. It's all year. They haven't been able to get much going, and they're lucky they're in the NFC South because I think they're going to get in. They're going to win that division because it's so bad. But if it was any other division, they'd be in the bubble and out of the hunt potentially right now.
So the Buccaneers finished their schedule with the Bengals, the Cardinals, the Panthers, and the Falcons. You know, I know what you're saying, but there's a real shot they don't make the playoffs. Carolina played them tough. Atlanta's played them tough. Tampa is not so far better than these teams in the division where these matchups don't scare me. And I think that the Bucs game really shows two things. One, Tom Brady's trying to do too much and trying to carry an offense out of essentially despair. And that tells me that he's probably going to end up on a new team next year. Could that be the team he just played? We shall see. That's something we can speculate about in the offseason. The other thing is, and I really wanted to see him succeed, especially after he failed in New York. Todd Bowles is not a good NFL head coach because, look, it's one thing to have the Jets. It's one thing to have a lackluster roster, but you have Tom Brady. You have all this talent on offense and all this talent on defense. You were in a Super Bowl, 2 years ago at this point? You should not be this bad. I understand there's been a lot of injuries, like truly a really big amount. A team with Tom Brady, a team with this offensive talent, a team with this defensive talent should not be this bad. And that's, at the end of the day, you know, that's really what it comes down to. There was a quote I heard the other day, and it reminded me of this saying, you know. I forget exactly who said it, and I can't 100% attribute it, but teams take on the identity of their coach. And I feel like that's something that isn't just football, but any sport. You know, we've seen it in baseball, right? The Phillies took on the identity of Rob Thompson. You know, they rallied behind Thompson, made a run to the World Series. The Mets took the identity of Buck Showalter. We saw that time and time again. They won 101 games this year. Football, you see it with the Lions. You see it with the Jets. They are taking on the identity of the coaching staff, the head coach, and they are improving and 100% moving in the right direction. What happens with Todd Bowles and the Bucs compared to when Bruce Arians was there? They took on the identity of Todd Bowles. They're not doing as well. You know, it has to come down to the head coach, the coaching staff, at the end of the day, because we saw this not just this week, but last week. In all likelihood, if Mark Ingram doesn't run out of bounds, the Buccaneers are losers of 2 straight. If Tom Brady doesn't lead a miracle vintage Tom Brady comeback, the Buccaneers are losers of 2 straight. When you're punting down 2 scores with like 4 minutes left in the game, I don't care if you come back and win. That is a terrible decision. That is forfeit football.
Yeah,
and that's
stop you right there. Just put it out there. Once they brought the punt team out for that punt, I walked out of the stadium. And,
that's right. You did. You were at the game.
yeah. So I was the only one out there booing, looking like an idiot. So I was all mad. And I'm not even a Bucs fan. I was all mad. And then we get in the Uber. We're passing the stadium. And Tre White scores the winning touchdown. Like, of course he did. But, yeah, that punt, I think everyone, like half the stadium emptied. It was discouraging.
But that's the type of identity they've taken. And it sucks because that's the same thing that they were doing, that Bowles was doing with the Jets. It's the same type of philosophy. So it just sucks to see, the Bucs in this spot. I don't think Brady's back next year. And that's really that. Austin, what's a game that really stood out to you?
Carolina, Panthers, Seattle. It's a good game. And I think if you can get Seattle just a quarterback, just a guy who can go back there and actually be a QB1 and run this team, they'll be successful. Their ground game has been great. Their offensive line has been actually really good this year. I'd say receiving-wise, they just don't know how to use DJ Moore that well. And
you mean Carolina? You said Seattle.
Oh, no, my fault. Just that game in general. But yeah, no, Carolina's run game is shown to be good every year, especially with McCaffrey. And now without McCaffrey, it's continuing to be good. I just don't think Darnold's that guy. I know they have Corral, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I would start giving him some reps. I mean, I know you have to see what exactly you have in full with Darnold, but I think you know that answer. So personally, if I'm them, start giving some reps to the young guy, or just be prepared to roll with him next year, or at least give him a chance to be the quarterback one. Because I think this Carolina team, if you give them a competent coach and the guy can run the quarterback position, they can be successful and improve the defense. But you can never have too many good defensive players.
Talk about a team taking on the identity of a coach. Steve Wilkes came in as the interim. Carolina's looked as good as they've looked really in years. They're playing strong. Their defense is back to where it was. They're things are starting to look up for them. And they've had the talent. It's just they weren't producing. So it's good to see Carolina, despite them probably needing a higher draft pick for a quarterback, it's better to make progress as a team and move forward in that direction. And to give guys that sense in a locker room, hey, we can win. We can win football games. We are a talented team, and allows them to build forward on that beyond this year. The last game I want to bring up, because if you want to bring up one more before we're done, the Jaguars-Titans game, I don't know what to do with the Titans. That's kind of my observation from that one. They are kind of all over the place. I couldn't really give you a good are they good? Are they bad? They're probably going to win the AFC South, and they could be one and done. They could make a run. This is typical Titans. And Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence is QB1 for a reason. The Jets, when fans were mad they lost out on him because of inexplicable win against the Rams, they were mad. And it's understandable because he's insanely talented. He's finally playing confident, which is hugely important at the quarterback position. He's making all the throws he needs to. And is Jacksonville great right now? No, they've been very shaky. Lawrence has been shaky-ish. But things are looking up for that team, and I think they could be the team that is threatening to overtake Tennessee next year in that division. That's my overall observation from that game.
Yeah, and this was exactly the game I was going to go to next. So I'm just going to stay here. Trevor Lawrence is here. Jets, like you said, Jets fans, rightfully so, can be upset they missed out on him. I think ETN's going to be a baller. He didn't, have the greatest game this week, but I think he's going to be a good player for this offense. And the thing out of the Jaguar side, like their playmakers are making plays. Like Evan Ingram was 11 for 162 and 2 touchdowns. A guy you just brought in this year, and giving a young quarterback like Lawrence a reliable tight end, it's a huge piece to their development. And then their other playmakers, Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, have been amazing this year for what you expected. I mean, I know you gave Kirk all that money, so I hope he's doing all that. But just Zay Jones himself, like Zay Jones has really flourished this year. Their defense as well. As for the Titans, I want to say, they need a wide receiver one. Well, go look at the wide receiver one you just traded this offseason, who is going insane on the Eagles and helping them be the best team in football. So they really kind of did it to themselves, because if they had A.J. Brown, I think they're a much better team than what they actually are right now.
And yeah, that's even with Treylon Burks looking pretty good this season. Like you still, Burks can reach that point, but he's just not there yet.
Yeah, a team with like Derrick Henry, like who's made the playoffs all these years, win their division, just I don't know, trade just didn't really make sense at the time. Still kind of doesn't. But that's how it goes. This team at the moment right now, I would say, is Derrick Henry or bust. That's kind of how it's worked, though, the past few years with this team.
Yeah, breaking news. The Steelers are signing defensive tackle Jonathan Marshall off the Jets practice squad to their 53-man roster. Marshall, he stood out in camp a little bit, so that's an interesting signing for the Steelers' interior D-line. Just wanted to bring that up because that is relating to the Jets. I think that's really it for the NFL talk. Like, the Vikings-Lions game. Vikings are the Vikings. I'm not surprised by that one. That's just the kind of game I expect them to lose. I'll be completely honest. And I guess the only other one I would even remotely bring up is the Dolphins-Chargers game. Huge game with AFC playoff implications. Chargers played the same style of defense the 49ers did, and guess what? The same results happened because Tua, if we pull up the box score here, Tua went 10 of 28 for 145 yards and a touchdown, and one of those was an absolute moon bomb to Tyreek Hill, who got hurt in that game. So I kind of want to see how Miami performs against Buffalo this week before I hit the panic alarm for them. But very interesting game because the Chargers, their defense hasn't exactly been great. And I think we can finally put to rest the Tua versus Justin Herbert debates, because good Lord, those were aggravating me.
It makes no sense. If you watch the games, you can't tell me Tua is really the better quarterback, just at the position. And just defensively, like you said, they took after the 49ers. You got to get physical with this team. You can't let Waddle and Tyreek just blow by you and beat you all game long. You have to get physical, push them around. Don't let them do what they want to do. And they've kind of been exposed for it the past 2 weeks, which I'm kind of interested to see what McDaniel does going forward and how he's going to change that up.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. It's like a basketball team, We gotta get your hands on them. Gotta make sure they're not getting free shots. So how McDaniel responds will be very interesting, because that'll dictate a lot of the AFC playoff picture, especially considering Miami, the Jets, the Chargers, and the Patriots are all very close to each other. So should be very fun. I think fun December football. I think that wraps up our NFL talk. See Jake in the comments. For me, obviously, what are your thoughts on the recent loss from the Jets? Jake, loss is spelled with 2 S's, but it's okay. we went over this earlier in the show. The loss, it's disappointing. It's not great. It hurts the Jets in terms of solidifying that playoff picture, but they showed enough in that game once again. They battled back to the point where if you don't make a few of those mistakes, you're probably having that one last drive to hit a field goal to win the game instead of having to go the length of the field to score a touchdown. I'm not concerned. I think they should be favored to win. They should be able to win the majority of their games down the stretch. So I'm not really overly concerned after that game. We got Mo Diesel, ETN or Walker, half PPR. I'd go with Walker if he was healthy, but since that's up in there, I'm going to go with ETN right now. Austin, you got anything else to add in terms of NFL stuff?
No, just based on this question, Walker, it's a Thursday night game against this 49ers defense that has just been stifling, especially Walker being banged up. I would also go with ETN right now, especially as Jaguars continue to get better.
All righty. So I think it's officially time to move on. But before we jump into crazy MLB free agency, I want to remind you guys once again, Creative Window Design Center, serving New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Florida. They are a fully authorized Hunter Douglas dealer. Contact Jeff at 609-226-0391 for a free consultation. Also, A2D Radio is sponsored by All Campus. All Campus is giving 20% off everything in their store, including hats and shirts to all their subscribers. Make sure to get in on that. You don't want to miss out. So, my friend, considering the fact that you probably missed one of the craziest MLB shows we could have had, I'm going to give you the floor because I could talk about the New York Mets all night for the rest of the show. What are your thoughts? Because guess what? Stuff happened. We don't have to speculate anymore.
Finally some stuff happened. I'm going to credit myself a little bit here. What did we get right? We had the Grom going first.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, not back to the Mets for Mets fans. Over to the Rangers. Turner came to Philly, which I was excited about. Did you get this? Was Bogarts in between these two shows? Because, it
was in between the two shows because this was the show where we had – I'm not trying to laugh through this. This is the show where the arson judge thing happened.
Right.
This is the show where we were doing it or I was doing it. And I look down and I see arson judge going to the Giants. And it's like, wait, what? Arson judge? What's going on here? And then Heyman retracts the tweet.
Tweets it again correctly.
No, yeah, arson judge deletes it. Puts it up that Aaron Judge is going. We're like, oh, yeah, this guy. And then he basically says, Judge not to the Giants. I jumped the gun. He then re-signs with the Yankees. Insane.
What was it, 9 years, 360?
Yeah, so if we pull up Spot Track here, Aaron Judge, 9 years, $360 million, $40 million per year. He is going to be the Yankees captain. Look, it's simple, the analysis on this. This is a move that had to be done for the Yankees. I don't know what offense they were going to find that can match the MVP's production. Aaron Judge is a Yankee for life. Let's face it, it's as it should be. He is going to be the next Yankee captain, as he should be. Great move for both parties. Aaron Judge, phenomenal job of driving up that price with John Heyman as your spokesperson. I see you working over there. But yeah, in all seriousness, great deal for both sides, in my opinion. If I'm the Yankees, I didn't care what the number was. As long as he was in pinstripes for life, that's all that mattered.
Yeah, this move, save their front office for the next probably 3 to 5 years. Unless stuff goes terribly wrong and they mess up something huge, this was a move that had to be done. They got their guy back. They weren't going to make up that production no matter who they signed. So the Yankees fans can rejoice and celebrate that. I know I live with 3 Yankees fans. They were convinced that he was a giant, especially after those tweets. And they're very happy he is back as a New York Yankee. Judge said himself his legacy mattered more than the money, but no matter where he went, he was getting at least $40 million a year. So I guess it really didn't matter.
No, I guess it didn't. I guess we got to talk about the Bogaerts deal next because, good Lord, 11 years, $280 million. I didn't think his market was going to be like that. I didn't think he was going for that type of money.
Yeah, I didn't think he was getting the big 10, 11-year deal, especially the Padres. The Padres just keep throwing their fishing rod out there, just hoping someone will catch on. They offered $400 million or whatever to Judge, Turner, and they just couldn't get anything. And then they bring in Bogaerts, and it's interesting. I think it's very interesting because Tatis, when he comes back, they're going to have to figure something out. Bogaerts, I would say Tatis definitely could move to the outfield. That's a discussion they're going to have with him. And I don't really think he's going to have that much of a choice.
So, between Machado, between Tatis, and between Bogaerts, the amount of money the Padres are paying the shortstops technically is absolutely ridiculous. But I guess what it comes down to for me is, okay, so Fernando Tatis has moved to the outfield, right? Your lineup's incredible. Does this mean the Padres don't value Tatis as much at shortstop as they used to because of the suspension, because of the issues he's had? Do they not think he's going to be the same type of player? Do they think, this might be blasphemy to say, do they think he's expendable? Which, I don't know how you trade that contract, but there's literally you can count the number of teams on a single hand right here that could probably trade for that contract. 2 of them reside in New York. 1 of them resides in the same state as the Padres. Maybe Philadelphia too. If you're trying to move that contract, right? The only teams that are biting are obviously it'd be the Padres evidently, but the Phillies, Yankees, Mets, Dodgers. So not even 5.
Yeah, it's a weird deal. So weird events that are still have yet to take place that will take place because they're going to have to figure something out. The lineup is scary. Yeah, I have to say that. But yeah, if they wanted to move Tatis, they're going to have to eat probably a good chunk of the contract, especially if he's coming off a suspension and hasn't played. It would be very hard to move him right now. If he did, I threw out a random hot take probably a month or 2 ago that he'd be traded, so that would be pretty crazy. That being said, I don't actually see it happening, and I'm interested to see how they put this lineup out there in the field when Tatis gets back, because he's going to want to play shortstop. That's how I would look at it, or how I look at it. I think he's going to want to play the shortstop position, but it's not available for him. He's going to have to play the outfield.
Frankly, I don't know how. I just don't know how everything fits. This entire offseason has just basically been half the team. It's literally 3 teams, the Mets, Phillies, and Padres, basically be yeah, what's money? Yeah, who cares about that, right? And just which is great for baseball. It's fantastic. But you have those teams and the teams that have signed maybe 1 player apiece. And I think that's a perfect segue to the Mets because I don't even remember. I think the only guy we talked about on the show was Verlander?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Verlander signs with the Mets. We've gone over that. The Mets then proceeded to sign Brandon Nimmo to a 8-year, $162 million deal. They let Taijuan Walker and Chris Bassett walk. We'll get to those guys in a second. They obviously bring back Edwin Diaz. They sign Jose Quintana. They signed Kodai Senga. They signed David Robinson. And there's rumors swirling that they could be in on Carlos Correa. So,
where would, or I guess he'd play third, right?
Because, yeah, so there was this old rumor, and I don't know how legit it was. And that's why I'm not oh, Correa's a Met. But there's this rumor that the only way Correa would even think about playing third base is if he was in the same infield with Francisco Lindor. Because remember, they both played together on the Puerto Rico team for the World Baseball Classic. They're really good friends. Now, that Mets lineup gets Carlos Correa. First of all, I don't care what New York team it is. Carlos Correa being in New York, absolutely hilarious. Just straight up, that'd be just absolutely hilarious. Subway Series, just oh man, storylines. I can't even run that through my head because that would just be just incredible scenes, just through and through. But the deal with that would be you're adding that power bat you needed in that Mets lineup if you truly get him. It's a move that does make sense. It's not something where it's like, all right, yeah, sure, we'll just add another guy for $400 million or $300 million or $250. But that would make, your right side of your infield, Lindor and Correa. You still have McNeil. You brought back Nimmo. You have Alonso. It makes the Mets a very dangerous team if that happens. And even regardless of that, the Mets are already running the highest payroll in MLB history. They're essentially at $350 million. So, and the funny thing is they still have moves to make. So it's not like they're gonna go just immediately stop. So it's very good for baseball that the Mets are running this high payroll. The Phillies with already Bryce Harper on the books, already Zach Wheeler on the books, already Kyle Schwarber and Castellanos went, hey, we need shortstop. Yeah, let's go get the best guy on the market. It's great that the Padres already with Tatis, already with Machado, we're like, yeah, let's throw out the biggest AAV value ever for a shortstop to Turner, get denied. Exceed the Yankees offer for Judge, get denied, and then get Xander Bogaerts. It's overall great. It's fun for the sport. It's entertaining. And that's not even including the under the radar deals. The William Contreras to the Cardinals from the Cubs, which, wow, didn't expect him to jump teams in the division. 5 years, $87.5 million. You got Tyone to the Cubs, 4 years, $68 million. Obviously, the Abreu deal. Bassett to the Toronto Blue Jays, 3 for $63. Mitch Haniger, Kenley Jansen to the Red Sox, which, shocking that they paid the closer before they paid their homegrown guy, but that's a different story.
That's the Red Sox way.
But at the end of the day, you have these deals, and it's just very fun to watch. And I guess that brings us to our next point. What's next? Because there's still very talented guys out there. We have the rumor swirling that at least 6 teams are in on shortstop Dansby Swanson. The teams listed: the Dodgers, Giants, Twins, Cubs, Red Sox, and Braves. This is according to Bally Sports' Russell Dorsey. You have Carlos Correa. Who's going to be in on him? You have some other guys that are still out there. So, personally, I think the next big move is Dansby Swanson, and I think he goes to the Giants. Because the Giants missed out on their big bat with Judge. I don't think they missed out on Swanson. I think he is the Brandon Crawford replacement. He brings this, not the same level of fielding, but enough level of fielding and better offense, and will be a nice compliment in that lineup.
Yeah, I think my personal, interest in Dansby Swanson. I think I would like him a lot more if he was on the Giants. That'd be a fire jersey to rock as well. But just going back to the Mets real quick, I do think they need to add a hitter. I think everyone kind of knows that. The lineup is very good right now. It's just if they can get one more bat in there, and if it is Correa, I mean, it's a lineup to be feared. The guy who I'm waiting to sign somewhere is Rodon. I think if he goes to the Yankees, which has been highly rumored, then they probably have the best rotation, if not top 3 in baseball. Some other moves. Dansby still has to sign somewhere. So, yeah, there's still 2 of the top shortstops available, Dansby and Correa, which is going to be interesting. And, I mean, some of these guys are going to go out and stretch this out until February. That's just how it goes, which sucks as fans. But that's just how the process works. As for the first move, I don't know who it's going to be. I want to say it's going to be Correa. He'll just go somewhere soon for a bunch of money for a long time, which will be interesting to see where he goes. I know the Yankees have also been rumored in that. I just don't see them bringing him and putting him in pinstripes because I think their fans would riot. So I don't know. I've heard some Yankees fans say, let bygones be bygones, but I'm not even a Yankees fan, and I wouldn't want him on my team.
I've always thought the Yankees needed that type of shortstop this offseason, but that was more so if they didn't get Judge. Obviously, you have Volpe waiting in the wings. You do have Peraza. So I guess you could give them a full shot this upcoming year. And I guess it makes sense why they don't want to block the younger guys. They feel like they have enough offense as is. So it's going to be very interesting, man. I'm very intrigued to see how the MLB offseason goes from here because, there's rumors that the Braves could trade Max Fried. Mets are floating Carlos Carrasco in talks. We are so far from this offseason being over. We haven't even had the big trade yet that Brian Reynolds has requested. We haven't had the surprise trade yet. We haven't had all the big fish sign. So there's still a lot to go for all of these teams. And it's be very interesting to see what happens. And as we always say, we'll have it all for you guys right here on the show. So before we move on, wanted to get to a few questions. I think we got to that one. So, Ted, would Jared Goff on the Jets make them a Super Bowl contender? I don't think so.
No for me.
I don't think so because I think he'd make them a playoff team, absolutely. Super Bowl contender, think your quarterback needs to do a bit more. A guy like Derek Carr, I think that gets you a little bit more of the step there. I think that gives you a lot better, overall play than Goff. Maybe not a lot, but I feel like a decent amount better. But, Goff's a steady hand. Goff works. It's just, I don't think he would elevate the Jets to the point where they are a Super Bowl contender. What do you think, Austin?
Oh, yeah, no, I agree. I don't think Goff would put them in the Super Bowl contention. I mean, yeah, he would probably better their chances at the moment. That being said, I just don't think it would slate them in as a top 3 team in the AFC just with him. But yeah, Derek Carr, maybe Jimmy Garoppolo, someone along those lines who can, maybe manage the game a little better, control the football. Maybe that would boost their chances. But yeah, I don't think Jared Goff would be the answer at the moment.
Yeah, so, back to your earlier point, just looking at MLB.com, the Yankees were listed to be in on Correa. The Yankees are thought that they're going to be going after heavy for Rodon. The Astros talking to the Diamondbacks about Dalton Varsho, which that'd be a very Astros move because if you follow baseball very heavily, I would say, you would know that Varsho is one of the more underrated players in the sport. Very versatile, very good player.
If they get him, I could just see him just them making him flourish into just a straight up baller. He's a good player.
Yeah, straight up, not baller, straight up superstar. I think far show on the Diamondback or the Astros would be like, it would be the middle of the season. It's like, how did they get him for nothing? How did this happen again?
Or like keep doing it. Yeah.
It's like how did they get away with this?
Yeah.
No, but in all seriousness, like we said, the hot stove is only heating up, and it's going to be very interesting to see how it continues to develop over the next few weeks. One more thing before we move on to some basketball and some hockey talk before we give our outlook for the week and get out of here. Did you know that Justin Jefferson is potentially closing in on the all-time NFL single-season receiving record?
I did not. Now I do.
Well, there is a tweet out here by NFL Rumors, which, hey, not always the most reliable source, but it is a stat. Justin Jefferson is 465 yards away from breaking Lions receiver Calvin Johnson's record for the most receiving yards in a season. Wow.
Really?
That's what 4 games left, right? 4?
Yeah, he's at 1,500.
Yeah, I think he could do it. What's the let me pull up the Vikings upcoming schedule because this is the important stuff. This is the important stuff.
He could do it.
The records. So, oh wow. Okay.
The opportunity's there.
So, do you want me to tell you the upcoming schedule for the Minnesota Vikings?
Yeah, I got it. Let the fans know.
All right. We know one of the games. So that one shouldn't be a surprise. But the Vikings finished this season home versus the Colts, home versus the Giants, in Green Bay, and at Chicago.
How many yards away is he? 470 something?
465. And he just had over 200 this past week. The most under the radar 200 game I've ever seen. I feel like no one's talked about it, including us.
Yeah. I mean, they lost.
Yeah, they lost. That's a good point. I think he can do it. I mean, it's Justin Jefferson. It's not out of the realm of possibility for the guy.
Well, I play him fantasy playoffs this week, so let's hope he gets 0 this week and then like 500 over the next 3.
And then you also have the caveat that he does it in 17 games. I don't care. He still breaks the all-time receiving record.
Yeah, no. NFL switched the schedule. He didn't choose to play 17 games.
You want to put an asterisk on that? Fine. Then let's make all new records then and completely get rid of the record book.
Yeah. We're not going to do that, so have to let it happen.
Let it happen. That's it. Do you want to talk about some basketball talk? Because things have kind of changed since the last time we spoke.
Yeah, let's get into it.
So, the New York Knicks learned how to play basketball again. In all seriousness, though, they're playing a lot better. They're currently the 6th seed in the Eastern Conference. They're a half game behind the Sixers. They are ahead of the Hawks, the Pacers, the Raptors, the Heat, and that's really it. The Bulls are kind of dropping out of contention fast. Yeah, so straight. They have, since I last was on the show, beat the Hawks 113-89, beat the Hornets 121-102, and beat the Kings 112-99. And quite frankly, a huge reason of this is that Julius Randle looks like 2020 version of Julius Randle. Playoff leading team Julius Randle. And that is gigantic for this Knicks team. Not to mention the fact that RJ Barrett is looking good once again. Mitchell Robinson's looking good once again. Jalen Brunson, despite the injury, looks like a superstar, the point guard that this team needs. And obviously with him being hurt, you're going to have to make some adjustments. Emmanuel quickly, probably getting some more time along with Deuce McBride. But you have the young guys playing well. You have guys like Quinnen Grimes, Obi Toppin when healthy, making important impacts. And you're not at this point now where, hey, you need to fire the head coach. Hey, you need to completely tank. You're in the playoffs right now. You're in the hunt. You're not losing pace with the better teams in the East. In fact, looking at the standings once again, you're only 2 games behind, 2.5 games behind the 4 and the 3 seed. So the opportunity is there if they keep up the pace. And the schedule upcoming is pretty friendly. You have back-to-back games with the Bulls. You play the Pacers. You play the Warriors, the Raptors, and then the Pacers again. There are opportunities for the Knicks to improve on this record, to really continue to move forward. And that's exciting because, like I said earlier in shows we've done, you either want to be good or you want to be bad. You don't want to be in the middle. And quite frankly, a 6 seed, a 5 seed, a 4 seed, that's good. That's not play-in territory. That is solidified playoff area. And quite frankly, all I could ask for as a Knicks fan.
Yeah, 2020, I think they were a good team, and then they got to the playoffs, and they really were on the back of their defense and the back of Julius Randle that year, it seemed like. And they 4-game win streak, and in all 4 of those wins, the most they'd given up was 102 points. That's very good, I would say, for an NBA game. And I think that's what they're going to have to get back to, is just playing good, hard defense. Thibodeau had the best. They were the best on defense in 2020 when they made the playoffs. Then they start losing this year. They're giving up 120 points, 130 points, and they're losing some games. But I think they can get back to good defense. And I mean, as long as Julius Randle's playing good basketball, they're going to be able to continue to improve. 2 games against Chicago, both in Chicago this week. Big games. You want to win them, especially the in-conference games. And then Indiana, who's been a good team, and then Golden State comes to New York. So it'll be very interesting to see, basically from now up until that Christmas game against Philly, where the standings will be in place.
Yeah, exactly. The Knicks defensive rating, last time I checked, it's top 10. It's at least over the last few games, last little stretch of games, their offensive rating's been climbing. This is good stuff. This is good stuff you want to see out of the Knicks. And, by talking about the Knicks and looking at the standings, guess what? The Nets are 17-2. I don't know what else you want me to say besides, hey, when you have Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, no matter what you think about them as people, no matter what you think about them, social media or anything like that, matter of fact is they are good at basketball. They are a very capable duo that, quite frankly, can mask the deficiencies of a short bench. When you have Kevin Durant going for 30, Kyrie Irving going for 24, and then you get double digits out of Ben Simmons, Joe Harris, and TJ Warren, that's all you need. The game before, when, if I pull this up correctly, when the game before you beat the Pacers by 3, looking at that box score, you have, they mixed it up.
Cam Thomas was the leading scorer of that
Exactly.
game.
My bad. That game, it shows you that the depth is a little bit better than you might have thought, because without KD, without Ben Simmons, without Kyrie, Cam Thomas 33, Edmund Sumner 21, Patty Mills 24, Day'Ron Sharpe 20, Markieff Morris 15, Yuta Watanabe 10. Like, if you even get a little bit better out of a not amazing supporting cast along with the superstars, you're not going to lose many games. You're just not.
Yeah, and if you look at their schedule from now until Christmas, you get Toronto, who's always a feisty team. Detroit, young team who they pick up a win there, especially with Cade's going to be out for the year. Then you get a big game for Golden State and then Milwaukee. So a 4-game stretch where they're going to be tested, especially also coming off a 4-game win streak, just like the Knicks. So these teams are getting better. We said, by Christmas is the real checkpoint where you can evaluate really how the season's going and where to go from there. And they're both heading in the right direction, which if you're a New York sports fan, you like to see it, depending who you root for.
And just to give a little bit of a Western Conference outlook too, as we kind of predicted, in a way, not 100%, the Jazz have come back down to earth. They are now the 10 seed. They are behind Golden State. But this conference is so tight that they are only 4.5 games out of the number 1 seed, which means they are tied with every team from 10 to essentially 8 and a 1 game behind every team up until the 5 seed. The parity in the West is legitimately insane. If we look at it, once again, the Pelicans are in first. Zion's been incredible. Ja with the Grizzlies. Those are the number 1 and 2 picks in the draft. I don't know what else you expected. Followed by the Nuggets, Suns, Kings, Trailblazers, Clippers, Mavericks, and then Warriors, Jazz. Lakers lurking a little bit. They've looked better as of recent. They're only 1 game ahead of the Thunder, which not great. The Thunder are more that rebuild mode, whereas the Lakers are supposed to be this good contending team. So
it's my favorite team.
Yeah, exactly. Christmas will be that real checkpoint. After that, we shall have a much better picture of, how the NBA season is going to unfold. Anthony Davis has been incredible. He's kind of one of the main reasons why the Lakers aren't like a bottom 3 team in the West, if not the NBA. So yeah, that's really it for our NBA coverage. I don't really have much to go over besides that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Once again, I mean, still early. These teams aren't really even at 30 games played yet out of 82. Check back up next week, of course. And yeah, like we both said, Christmas is the true checkpoint where you can decide which way your season's honestly going to go.
And then to flip back to hockey, just to finish up the show before we close it out. Hey, guess what? We said it was early. It was early. The Rangers are currently on a 4-game winning streak. They have jumped the Islanders, who are now in 5th in the Metropolitan Division. The Rangers are 1 point behind the Hurricanes, 3 behind the Penguins. And as of now, it kind of looks like the New Jersey Devils are running away with the Metro. Just to give an update, the Philadelphia Flyers are, they're the Flyers. That's all I'll say about that.
Fire Chuck Fletcher.
Yeah,
it's all the team. Something.
The Rangers are also tied with the number 3 team in the Atlantic Division, which would be the Tampa Bay Lightning. So, hey, imagine that, right? It's early enough in the year where the Rangers are turning things around. They're playing good again. They just beat the Devils in overtime yesterday. So, important to remember with basketball and hockey that kind of in a similar sense with baseball, it is a long season. It's really once you reach that midway point that you can really make firm assertions about what's going on with these teams, if they're a contender, if they're not a contender. And just to look at some of the Rangers' past games, on this 4-game win streak, after losing to the Blackhawks, they beat the Blues 6-4. They then beat the Golden Knights 5-1. The Avalanche 2-1, a huge win, and then beat the Devils in overtime 4-3. So, look, defense getting better. Obviously, against these higher scoring, very good offenses, you're going to let up some goals. But that's where the Rangers offense comes into play. You got Vincent Trocheck contributing. You have, Philip Hedl with the overtime goal last night to win the game. Like, the young players are going to continue to develop. The offense is going to be there. And as long as your defense is shored up, as long as Igor is being Igor, the Rangers have a shot in every game, in my opinion.
Yeah, just looking back on that Colorado game, just being able to beat them, just huge test. Probably a huge confidence boost in the locker room. Igor was 41 for 42, and then in the shootout, pretty sure he was a brick wall there as well. So just being able to beat the former champs just shows kind of where you're at. It's a good testament to the season, and yeah, still early, just like the NBA. One loss ain't gonna kill you right now. One win won't save your season right now. A lot of hockey to be played,
but a
and,
losing
yeah.
streak will. A losing
Yeah.
streak will.
Can't be going on big losing streaks. But one loss here and there isn't going to end your season. Keep throwing shots on net. You're going to get your goals, and you have a top 3 goalie in the league. So rely on your strengths.
I feel like your hockey team might know a thing or two about losing streaks, though, right?
Unfortunately, I think Chuck Fletcher has had like 5-10 game losing streaks in his tenure or something.
Pretty incredible, man. That's honestly, and not to even like hate on the Flyers, just in a sports sense in general, to have 5 separate 10-game losing streaks and still have a job is actually ridiculous.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, especially when they're just signing the wrong guys to 5-year contracts. Like Ristolainen, dude's so old. He's on like a 5-year deal. He's not going to be a part of the future. There's just like barely any bright spots either. It's tough. Like you want to say like, oh, in 5 years we'll be like where the Rangers were last year, where you have to be bad for like 5 years in hockey, groom some guys up into the league. It's just not even that good. Like, and then you got Tortorella every night saying, "Man, our team is dog water," like just trashing the young guys. And yeah, I mean, I see zero future in this team besides Carter Hart, and I mean, Sean Couturier is going to be out for the year probably. It's just
Man,
on and on.
John Tortorella, that brings back some memories, man.
I mean, I kind of love it because he just says straight up, "We suck," but at the same time, it's hard to be a fan. And I'll still put on the damn TV, put on the Flyers game every night just because I'm a sicko.
That's fair enough. But I mean, like to put that in like football terms, that'd be like the Hugh Jackson Browns literally having those 2 seasons and then keeping him for 3 more seasons.
Yeah, it's been long, and we're only we are 29 games played, so what is that? Like 50 something more.
All right. So with that conversation out of the way, that brings us to the end of our show. What are you looking forward to for this week, and what are you keeping an eye on?
Let me take a look at this NFL schedule this week. What do we like? Well, let's see. We got a good matchup, Dolphins Bills. I like that one. Could very well be high scoring. We got Saturday football this week as well, so beware. You will see some games. What do we got? We got a 4:30 and an 8:15 on Saturday. 2 divisional games. So
and a 1 o'clock.
Up for that. Is there 1 o'clock? Oh, there is a 1 o'clock Saturday. So we get 3 games on Saturday, which I don't mind. Especially with I guess bowl games start this weekend in college, and another game I'm looking forward to. I mean, the Falcons versus the Saints. Falcons have a real chance. If they want to go make the playoffs and potentially win. I mean, we get Ritter. Maybe they'll win that division. Mariota's on the IR now, so we'll see. That's a big game that will be very much slept on, I'm sure.
Yeah. So for me, I'm looking at every game playoff implications. So we got the Colts Vikings. Obviously, that's for seeding. The 49ers Seahawks. That's going to be a huge game for the NFC West. That's on Thursday. On Saturday as well, the Dolphins Bills game, the Jets Lions game, the Falcons Saints game, Patriots Raiders game, Titans Chargers, and Giants Commanders. Is that essentially half the NFL? Yeah, exactly. But that's what's so fun about December football. Every game means something for these teams that are still in the playoff hunt. Every game has implications. I'm really interested to see how these teams handle these types of games and how they move forward from there. And then the last thing, I'm looking to see if the Knicks continue their pace, continue to win games, continue to solidify their standing as a playoff team. And I'm also looking for the Mets to add a bat this week, hopefully.
Yeah, a lot more dominoes to fall in the MLB offseason, which I'm always excited for. Ready for a tweet to pop up on my phone that something crazy happened. So just be ready. It could happen literally any second. So it could happen in the middle of the night for all we know. So
yeah, with the luck we've had, we'll end the show, and 5 minutes later, there'll be the biggest signing of the week. So
yeah,
thank you guys for joining us once again this week. Really fun as always. Thank you guys for leaving the comments in the chat, allowing us interact, have different questions. Keep doing that. We love answering them. We love answering your fantasy questions, your football questions, baseball questions. Anything that is on your mind, we'll get to. We'll be back next week. Should be another fun week of recapping the latest in New York sports and really all the big professional sports. So, Austin, any parting words for the people in the crowd?
just appreciate everyone tuning in. Like Brandon said, interacting with us, leaving comments. It's always fun answering your questions and giving our outlook to you and what we think is going to happen next in the sports world. So appreciate you guys tuning in.
Well, it's been real. It's been fun. It's been real fun. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.